Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Alice, as you guys know, and I'm super excited to be coming to you live from my home studio here in Los Angeles for another adventure travel chat. Now, if you guys are joining us live, please leave your questions and comments in the live chat and we will get to them as we go along. I am very excited to be joined by my friend, fellow solo traveler, photographer, and writer, Joanna Kalafatis from Lose the Map. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Alice. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad that you're here with us and you're
Same.
joining us from Los Angeles as well.
I am. We're in the same city, socially distancing.
Yes, funnily enough, we can't actually be together, but we are together virtually. So
Exactly.
it's wonderful. How is quarantine treating you?
Um, definitely differently than I imagined. But it's been going pretty well. I mean, there are definitely weeks where I'm very productive and I'm on top of things and I'm creating content and, meditating and journaling. And then there was a week like this week, which granted it was my birthday, so I took the week off kind of, where I did literally almost nothing. So, I feel there's a lot of ups and downs for people for sure.
Yeah, happy birthday, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you celebrate?
A lot of Zoom happy hours, a lot just in a row.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have been doing that lately.
Yeah.
I know I've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings too. I definitely
And
wanted to have you just tell us a little bit about kind of yourself and how you got into
of
solo travel, how you fell in love with travel. And
course.
like me, you have I think a lot of passions and careers. And luckily, I think our like big money making careers allow us to travel. But tell us kind of how you fell in love with travel and what you do. What are all of these careers that you have as well?
Of course, like everyone in LA, 7 different careers going on at once, of course. I mean, I was lucky to grow up in a family that my parents really loved to travel. So, I have been traveling since I was little. But I think I really fell in love with it when I went to study abroad in university. That was a little different because it was for 3 different countries. It was South Africa, Brazil, Vietnam. And you stayed with homestay families, and it was a very immersive experience, like talking to people in the community and to organizations that work there. And I think staying with people who were born and raised in the place and having those conversations and having that experience of a country really started my love for traveling in a different way, like traveling as immersively as possible and connecting to local people as much as possible. And then the way I started my blog is originally I'd moved to LA for acting, but acting, as I'm sure you know, living here is a very up and down profession. Some years you're like auditioning and booking and getting jobs, and some years you're just waiting for things to happen. And I'm not a person that does well with waiting for things at all. So the way I kind of started this part of my journey is I wrote freelance articles for extra cash anyways. And even though I enjoyed obviously making extra money, I wasn't really writing in the style and about the things I would have liked to write about. So I'm like, you know what? I'm having kind of a low audition period with acting. Let me start a blog and let me start about travel because that's what I love to do. That's what I'm passionate about. And I just got a camera. So I'm like, let me work on my photography as well. And it started as more of a passion project for me, as I'm sure many blogs do start. And then, the first 6 months, it was my friends and family reading, if that, for the most part. And then my photography started to develop, my writing started to develop, people started noticing me. I started getting offers to write for other websites as well, and, monetization, all of that. And yeah, so now, I mean, I still do acting. I do writing and photography. Those are my 3 kind of main connected things. And it works out pretty well. I try to schedule most of my travel for like the low filming audition periods, like over summer, over like December, January, and schedule most of my big trips there. And they've combined pretty well, honestly, because I find all those 3 careers to be storytelling in essence. So yeah, it's combined pretty well. I published my first 2 photography books last year in California, Band in California, which was super cool to go to a bookstore and be like, that's fine. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you a little bit more about that book, Abandoned
Sure.
California, because I think it's so cool. I think, a lot of travelers, especially bloggers, photographers, they're like always looking for a niche. And I think
Yeah.
that you definitely found one with this. Now,
Yeah.
there's so many cool like old ghost towns and stuff like that in
Mm-hmm.
California, and you got to photograph them for this book that came out, and I absolutely loved it. If people want to pick up a copy, I think they can get one at Amazon or pretty much everywhere books are
Yeah.
sold, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us, what are some of the favorite places, if you had to pick 2 locations out of that book that surprised you or that you got really into? What were 2 of the places?
I mean, for me, my favorite by far ghost town in California is Bodie, which is, it's north central-ish California towards the Nevada border. It's east of Yosemite, kind of. It is the best preserved old Western ghost town in the entire United States. And so you go there, and it hasn't really been turned into, I mean, it's a state park, so there's a ranger and an entrance, but it hasn't really been turned into any kind of attraction. There's not like, you know, themes or gift shops or anything. So you really get to see very much like this preserved image of what it was like to live in California in the late 1800s, because Bodie was a booming mining town then, known for a lot of violence, a lot of crazy things actually. And the buildings are just, you know, it's haunting. There's a main road, there's probably, I would venture to say, over 50 buildings left completely preserved, and you look inside the windows and you just see things left there as is, as people left them. Because it's a very hard place to live once the mines ran out, basically. It's like 8,000 feet elevation, super cold in the winter, inaccessible in the winter, super hot in the summer, no trees, no water. Like, there's no reason to be there if there's no mining going on, basically. So everyone just left one day. But it gives you a very cool glimpse into what the Old West was like. And because I was a kid in Europe where we were obsessed with the Old West because we didn't have that stuff there, for me, it was like a dream come true to go to Bodie and photograph it and spend time there. So that's definitely the number 1 place that stood out. The other one actually is the Salton Sea, which is Southern California. It's actually southeast of LA, a couple hours, close to like where the Coachella Festival happens, I guess. But it's interesting to me because a lot of places in Southern California especially are around 90% abandoned, meaning there are still people living in some of the residences. So for me was, you know, I really want to try and be respectful. I can understand how they would feel not great things about people coming to photograph around, not their own homes, obviously, but in the areas they're still living in, due to, you know, financial difficulties. They can't move out, they can't sell their properties. But for me, Bombay Beach, which is the big abandoned settlement there, was a real warning as to how quickly humans can mess up an environment if we're not careful. Because Salton Sea, for those of you who don't know, used to be a beautiful resort town in Southern California in the 60s and 70s. And because there were so many hotels and houses built on the shores, it's not a sea that connects. I mean, it's an inland sea and doesn't connect to anything in terms of runoff. So all the pollution was just going into the water. And it made the water so acidic that there's like all the fish died, everything started stinking really badly, and people just left in droves. And it's never really recovered from that. So there's just abandoned resort settlements, which is crazy.
Yeah, I've been out to the Salton Sea, and it is
Yeah.
pretty remarkable that people still live there. Hey everyone, sorry for this interruption, but this video today is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is one of the best online learning websites on the internet. You can learn everything from photography to how to build your own website, how to make a YouTube video, and much more. And right now you can get 2 months free at my link right below in the description. So thanks so much, happy learning, and now back to the video. But yeah, so the Salton Sea, these places in this book,
Mm-hmm.
are just so cool. Now, are you planning on making another follow-up book at all?
At the moment, it's some plans have been put on hold because I did abandoned Southern California and Northern California, and that was for Arcadia Publishing, which approached me to do the books. They have offered me to possibly do like maybe one focusing on LA. I didn't feel I could do that because so many of the places I would cover for LA had already covered in Southern California. But it's definitely, you know, I'm definitely thinking about it. I was approaching them actually to do something on my home country, possibly of Greece, which has, they have their own abandoned cool towns for entirely different reason. Like there's one town where it's kind of like Centralia in Pennsylvania, where a fissure's basically opened up and the whole town is in danger of sliding, but hasn't really slid, and so it's abandoned.
Oh, wow.
But it's still there, kind of not uneven keel surface. Yeah, so definitely, I mean, there's an abandoned NATO base very close, like 10 minutes from my house, actually, in Greece. There's cool abandoned stuff to explore for sure.
I think there's definitely just so much
Oh yeah.
much more cool abandoned stuff in Europe compared to obviously
I
here in the United
mean,
States. There's so much more history.
that's what I was going to say. It's going from like so many older centuries, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you actually grew up in Greece, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Greece. We moved to New York when I was 10, but because we kept our house there, we kind of went back and forth. So I was raised between countries in a certain way, which I think that also definitely inspired my love of travel, because it was really cool for me growing up and getting those two different cultural perspectives, you know, just going back and forth and kind of seeing how things compared and how people might have thought differently about life and culture and society and people in general. So that was definitely a really cool thing to experience. I mean, I'm very grateful for it now, even though when I was that age, I'm like, why are you taking me from my school and friends? That's all I cared about.
I bet.
Yeah.
But yeah, Joanna was just talking about, her upbringing in Europe. And
Mm-hmm.
do you think that that led to kind of some of your love for travel? Or what was your first kind of, I mean, obviously your family probably traveled a lot with being
They did. And it is,
high
I mean,
country.
yeah, that's part of the thing. I feel that if you do grow up someplace like anywhere in Europe, basically, it is easier to travel just because of the distances and, like, you know, train connections and cheap plane connections. So it was definitely, I mean, people I know, even if they're making a lower income in Greece, for example, and someone in the US, are probably do have more opportunities to travel, which is a great thing that can be said for there. And yeah, it definitely inspired my love for travel because, again, going back and forth between the two cultures and seeing different perspectives on life, and different lifestyles and different just cultural perspectives in general. It really made me interested to see, well, how do people all around the world view life, view society, view community? You know, what are the traditions? What are the moral standards? How they vary in different places? It just made me very curious to learn more about that. And yeah, it definitely helped inspire my love of travel because I got very used to getting onto planes from a very young age as well. Like, all right, we're doing this again. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things I actually love to read on your blog, and
Yeah.
if you don't want to talk about it, I'll just give people where they
I
can
probably
find
do.
that. But your accident that you actually had in South Africa and kind of how
Yeah.
that changed your outlook on why you wanted to travel and kind of like living your life to the fullest.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I was always a very creative person growing up. But when I was in college, I'd studied economics and specialized in development economics, and I liked it just fine. But I definitely felt like, you know, all the creative parts of me were not being expressed and were not being explored, and I was too cowardly at that point, kind of, and much too grounded, quote unquote, to really pursue a creative kind of career. And when I was in South Africa on the study abroad program, I had a car hit me, a combi taxi actually, which if you've been to South Africa, they're like these illegally operated minivans that just shove a bunch of people in and like take them all over the place. And they drive like crazy people. So yeah, it hit me. I had a lot of blood loss. I broke my left leg. My left lung partially collapsed. Like I was in the hospital for 10 days. And then I required a lot of physical therapy after. I was in a wheelchair for a few weeks, then crutches for a few months. And it definitely shifted something in me. I mean, I had a year of college left at that point, and I wanted to see it through, obviously, and finish up. But I started thinking to myself, like, I could have, you know, died in that instant, or everything could have changed in that instant. My way of life could have changed, because the doctors even told me, you know, the car hit you in the exact right locations for you to not have permanent damage, basically, which was a very lucky break. I mean, not the luckiest. The car would not have hit me if it was the luckiest break, but it definitely affected how I thought, because I'm like, well, everything could have stopped right there. And what am I doing? I'm not doing the things I really want to do. I'm just kind of going through the motions of things that I feel are practical and reasonable. And, you know, and so I made the decision my last year of college, you know, I'm going to finish it out. But spring break, I booked a flight to LA to start scouting out neighborhoods I'd want to live in, because I figured if I'm going to do this, you know, acting, entertainment, writing thing, I really need to get out of my comfort zone and change my environment and immerse myself in a place where, you know, like most of my friends in LA now are in some way involved in like writing, directing, camera work, acting, producing something. And it definitely creates a very different kind of support system for you in this industry. But yeah, so I made that decision. And then when I graduated, a couple months later, after I'd had my surgery to take rods out of my leg and everything, I moved to LA. So yeah.
Yeah, what a big transition. I mean, what
Huge.
what a terrifying also accident. And I'm so glad that you came out of that without any long-lasting damage.
Yeah.
I mean, God, that must have been terrifying for your parents too.
Was for sure.
Yeah, and you guys can actually, if you go to Lose the Map,
Mm-hmm.
Joanna's website, you can actually read more about that whole experience and kind of,
Yeah.
you know, more details on that if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about travel a bit more, because
Yes.
you've been to what, 30 countries, maybe a bit more now?
I've been to, I think I hit 40 this last year, actually, with this last trip.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's great. I mean, I've explored, a lot of it has been North America, Caribbean, Europe. I have been to 5 continents at this point, though. I got to go to Egypt this last summer, which was a dream come true, because like I loved, you know, archaeology and ancient Egypt and all that growing up. So I went in August, which maybe was not the best idea, but I did have a great time, even though it was one of the hottest things I've ever experienced. Yeah, I went to I've been to 40 countries. I want to explore a lot more of Asia, because Asia, I've really only been to Japan and I guess Turkey for the Middle Eastern part. And South America, I had my last trip, which is seeming like it might be my last international trip for a while, was Argentina and Chile, because one of my closest, oldest childhood friends lives in South Argentina, which is in the north. And I've always said I'm going to visit her, and I finally did. And by the way, guys, if you can visit anywhere that you can see with a friend, I highly recommend it, because you're going to get such a different experience of the country with someone who lives there, knows language, and has a life there, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I went to Salta, all around that Salta Jujuy area. I do think northern Argentina is one of the most underappreciated places in the world. Like, it is stunning. It is mountains and desert and jungle and all these indigenous villages, you know, where that culture has been kept. So I went there, and Buenos Aires, Ushuaia, and then all around Patagonia, which was just a breathtaking experience, and just really seeing, you know, the majesty of what nature can be when we protect it and preserve it and let it do its thing, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I mean, Patagonia
Yeah.
has been on my bucket list for so long. It's definitely
You would,
like,
yeah, you'd love it.
I would love it. Yeah.
You would absolutely, like, maybe even go more crazy than me about it. Yeah. So
Yeah, I know you went to like all the places I want to go. And I actually have a friend that's from Argentina, and every year
wow.
he's like, come down and like stay with me. They have like
Yes.
a little eco resort down there, and
Oh
like
my God.
just the timing never seems to work out, but I'm definitely kicking myself for like not going over the holidays this year.
For sure.
And like, you're so lucky that you got like a trip in, I think, you know, before.
Oh, I'm really happy that was, you know, the last experience I had. It's crazy to think about the fact that I was down there in January. I mean,
Yeah.
everything seems so different now. In January, I was in Patagonia, right? Just casually. Yeah, no, but it was a great experience. It's definitely a very active kind of vacation for the most part. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely got all my steps in daily. I did the, when we did the Torresdale pain hike, it was amazing. And the view at the top was so incredibly worth it in Chile, in the Chilean side of Patagonia. But I got back to the hotel and literally just lie down, face down on the floor of my room, because I was so dirty. I couldn't even touch anything, like any furniture. I'm like, I need an hour here, and then I can start cleaning. It's definitely it's a challenge, but it's a wonderful challenge if you do, you know, those kind of hikes in Patagonia. It's a beautiful place.
And I was going to, let's see here, pull up a photo from your trip, if it will show us here.
I will also say, actually, I think on that photo you're going to show, there is nothing so
Sure, that word.
loud and weird as hearing a glacier shift and crack, which is something we had quite a lot of in Patagonia.
Oh my goodness.
Like we'd be sitting there, I'd be taking photos of, you know, glacier and surroundings, and suddenly you just hear like, and like it just starts to move. Like, oh, okay, so ice is just falling into the ocean. That's fine. Yeah.
Well, let's
definitely
see if I can transition over to that. So
for sure.
here we go. There you guys go. There is Joanna at one of the glaciers there. Yeah. And you guys can also just see those like stark contrasting colors. I mean, it looks like, it's crazy to see like trees so green.
It looks surreal. I mean, my people ask me, you know, how much editing did you do on these? I'm like, no, this is an almost unedited photo. I was sending people like the raw versions of the photo to be like, look, this is what it looked like. It's so, you know, it's amazing to me how there are genuinely places on Earth that look so surreal. You're like, well, that has to be altered somehow. Like, it can't just look like that. I'm like, no, it just looks like that. It's so vibrant. And you go to these, you know, glacial lakes that are this like electric turquoise blue that look like they shouldn't exist in real life. It looks like it should be, you know, in a crayon box. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable to see places like that. And for those of you guys that don't know, Joanna and I both hiked Mount Kilimanjaro. I did it the year before she did, but that's another place on this planet that just is like so mind blowing, because you go from, you know, being in the jungle to being on top of the entire continent of Africa. So
and not breathing very well. I mean, I'm assuming that was your experience.
Yeah. How was your experience climbing? Because I know for me, like, I had a really hard time the last couple of days. And I don't
think anyone has an easy time on summit day. I don't think, I did not see one person who was like, well, that was a breeze, let's just go. It was stunning. It was the kind of thing where on summit day, it was one of the most difficult things I've put my body through. But then, and I'm sure you can relate, as soon as we got back down to the gate and completed the hike, I'm like, well, I want to do that again now. I want to do the crazy thing I just did to myself again. Because it's a really beautiful life in the mountain. I'll say that. Like, my experience was great. I did the 9-day, the Lemosha route, and 9 days with no real Wi-Fi, no email, no text. Something shifts in you in a very welcome way. Like, I was so present in the moment. It was just getting up. We had a group of people that, thank God, we all got along so well. Like, we're still in touch. We're still friends. And we'd wake up, have breakfast together, joke around, start just hiking and walking and taking little breaks, get to the second campsite, well, wash up in whatever ways we could. Baby wipes, you know, baby wipes are your friend.
Yeah, they are.
Yes. Yeah, I was just, oh my God. And try to put them somewhere warm, because when I woke up in the morning, it was like below freezing at night. And if you try to put on baby wipes, I'm just like, like just barely able to touch my skin. But yeah, then you get there, have dinner. I'd usually like read or journal or just admire the view and take some photos for a bit before retiring to my tent with my tent mate, I guess. And it was just so nice to have that disconnection on a certain level, to have that, okay, I can just be here. There's no emailing to check. There's no one I need to get back to. There's nothing I need to do. I mean, occasionally we'd find some text service, and I just use it basically to just text my mom that, like, hey, you know, still alive, please don't worry, and just keep going. But yeah, summit day is extremely difficult. I mean, different companies do it a bit differently. I think you did the thing where people start at midnight, right? You started hiking.
Yes.
We got up around 3 a.m. We did it, which is still not optimal, and started hiking around 4. And it was just it was so difficult, and it was so hard to breathe. And it is a long hike. You go from just over 15,000 feet to, you know, the summit of Kilimanjaro, which is over 19,000 feet. And it feels like you're moving in slow motion, right? Because the pace has to be so slow, so you're not running out of oxygen. And when we started going back down, the last hour or so, it started raining and fog rolled in. So I was like glued to the assistant guide's back, because I'm like, I can't see anything, which is not a great feeling when you're exhausted and like your arms and legs are starting to give out. And you're like, I can't see like 2 feet past my nose. I can't. And it starts raining. And the last last like 30 minutes is you're clambering down these rocks to get to the campsite, and it's pouring and they're like slick. And I had a moment of just absolute, like at that point, you know, your mind just stops functioning. And I had a moment, I'm on the rocks, it is raining. I've literally never felt that. I'm like, okay, my legs can't keep going. Not that like, oh, if I push them, I'm like, no, they're done. Like, I don't think I can do anymore. And I'm on the rocks, and Alex, one of the wonderful assistant guides, who's awesome. Again, someone I still talk to this day. He's like, we have to come on. It's 20 minutes to camp. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay here. I had that moment. I'm like, my brain registered that. I'm like, it's fine. I'll sleep on the rock in the rain. It's fine. Find me tomorrow. I can't do that.
I will say I had one of those moments too, but it was like at that summit, Stella Point.
Oh yeah.
Where because I thought that was the summit, and I was like, oh my God, we finally made it.
And you're like, nope, there's more.
And then they were like, no, this isn't the summit. And I was like, I want to turn around. Screw it. I don't even care anymore. And they're like, no, you don't. And I was like, but I like needed like some definitely
a moment to collect yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's why one of the things they told us the night before is that reaching the summit, I mean, obviously it's a big physical exertion, but people, like, you need to keep your mental self together, because when people give up, it's usually because of mental stuff going on, of like having a mini breakdown, you know, on the mountain, like I did. Like, and it's just important in that moment to be like, come on, this experience of a life. Like, unless you feel, with this caveat, unless you really feel like physically something is going wrong, in which case tell your guide and they will probably get you back down. Do not try to, I mean, we had someone, not in our group, but we had someone in another group die in the mountain that day on the summit. And we didn't realize, they didn't tell us until we got back to camp the next day, because they didn't want us to be freaking out. But you could sense, like, the guides were all on their walkie-talkies, like going back and forth in Swahili. You could sense something was going on. And yeah, basically it was one of the unfortunate risks. He had a pulmonary embolism.
Oh my God.
Which you do show symptoms of before, like he should have gone back down, but I guess he wanted to press or keep going or something. But yeah, so it's that, I mean, yeah, for the most part though, guys, like, this isn't, Kili is not a very dangerous, like, it's not like a lot of people are. Like, anything that could happen to you, you see signs of it way beforehand, and just be like, if you're really not feeling well, just turn back down. It's not worth your health for life. So,
yeah. Definitely. I mean, and I think the thing with any of these high, mountain climbs is, like, you really have to pick a good guiding service. I know the one that I went with, like, they checked our blood oxygen level, like, in the morning,
every single night. Same. Like, yeah.
There's a lot of companies that don't do that, unfortunately, and like that aren't safe.
And that's why I tell people,
why people end up, dying.
Well, I tell people, like, especially for Kilimanjaro, it's not really something, even though I'm usually, I'm always in favor of, like, the more budget travel, the better. And I'll stay, like, in the last hostel if it means I get to see a city and no money. But when you are going up Kilimanjaro, like, it's not something I would really suggest getting, like, the lowest budget, like, really skimping on, because that usually means they're treating the porters and everyone not well and not paying them well. And that's just not something I want to support. I mean, I could tell that with the company we chose to go with, that everyone was very, it was a community and everyone was looking out for each other and being treated well and being paid well. And obviously that's something I want to support when I'm traveling. But also, yeah, I mean, our guides basically told us, for the man that died in the mountain, I'm not going to say names because I don't remember the name of the tour company he was with, honestly, but they did tell us, like, we're not fans of theirs, because they don't train people, they don't train their guides properly to look out for signs of an embolism, coming. Like, I'm sure if that guy was with our group, they would have spotted it and he probably would be fine now. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember meeting a woman also that, at the last camp, basically the night before we were going up to the summit, and she had clear signs of altitude sickness and had been, like, throwing up and all this stuff, which she really should have been sent back, but they still were letting her continue up to the summit the next day. So
just not worth the risk. Yeah.
Irresponsible companies out there. So it's best to look for one that's sustainable, eco-friendly. And there's 100%. Actually a company called KPAP, for those of you that may be watching this and interested in climbing Kilimanjaro at some point, that actually certifies tour companies to make sure they are treating porters well. And
I didn't know that. Good. Yeah.
Well. So that's just something for you guys that are watching this that might be interested in that. but yeah, we both do a lot of community tourism, I think. And for those of you that
Yes.
are watching, Joanna and I actually met on a trip to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, where we were
Mm-hmm.
going to basically do some journalism for and research with an organization that was supporting women and children in this beautiful city. And there are women that mostly were young and had children and needed help with school and daycare, and they actually fed the kids. A fantastic organization, but we really saw the disparity of wealth there, and
Yes.
just it was a great way to learn about the community. And I really enjoyed that trip and meeting you, obviously.
Yeah, no, I love meeting you. We had a great group of people there. It was a really good trip. And it was also nice, like you said, to see the community in a different way. And also I love coming across organizations that really, I mean, one of the things that organization emphasizes that before we started this, we asked the community, what is it you need? You know, how can we best use our resources to help you? Because I feel like a lot of organizations maybe go in and do what they think is best and don't really care to get the community involved. And that usually doesn't work out so well. But yeah, I thought it was really great how it really became, even though, you know, it was started with outside funding, it really became a community-based initiative helping people out. And you know, it's always interesting when you travel, for me at least, and for Alice. It's always interesting to me when you travel to kind of see different sides of a city, maybe not just like the very rich tourist center or that kind of thing, but to really get an experience of what life is like for a variety of communities and people in that city. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, like, after this pandemic, I think that we're going to see a lot more people doing community-based tourism. I think people
Yeah.
are going to be traveling a lot more locally. So I'm glad that we've had those experiences and we're able to share them with people, because I think that that kind of travel is so important, and it's a better way to experience the world, where you get to actually see like the cultural side of a place and not just like the pretty hotels and restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. We get to have like more interaction with people who live there. And I mean, again, it's one of the things I love doing when I travel, just start a conversation, you know, listen to people who live there. They probably know a lot to tell you about what the place is like, where you should go, what you should do. So it's great from, you know, a tourism perspective, but also for just like a cultural understanding perspective of getting to know what issues the place you're in is facing. And yeah, I agree that in the short term, at least, and by short term, I mean like through 2021, for sure, I think domestic and local travel is definitely going to be more of a thing. I mean, I'm even noticing now, when we're still basically at home, even the walks I take my dog on, I'm noticing so much more about my neighborhood. Like, I've literally been on streets I've never been on in my own neighborhood. I'm like, how have I never just walked down this street? You know, I've lived in this neighborhood 9 years now.
Yeah, isn't it funny? You actually get to learn like more about your local environment.
Yeah.
And I think that was, I actually put an article out like right at the beginning of quarantine about, you know, just paying more attention, I guess, to like
so much
the
more,
stuff
so
around
much
you.
more.
Because
It's all you're getting to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because you walk around and you're like, oh my God, I
Mhm.
never noticed that house or this
Yeah.
wall or this mural
Yeah.
or
I
so
have
it's funny.
neighbors now in my neighborhood who I see repeatedly, which I'm in a big apartment building. I'm in West Hollywood, which has like a lot of apartment buildings. Usually I don't recognize the same people again and again. And now like everyone has their jogging routines and their dog walking routines. So I keep seeing the same people, and now we know each other, I guess. But yeah, I think domestic travel and more local travel. I mean, I'm looking forward to definitely exploring more of Southern California, because there are places embarrassingly close to my house that I've not gotten to, because, you know, when I do have time for a trip, I'm probably going to be looking to fly somewhere or go somewhere abroad. So there's like, I've never been to Sequoia National Park, which is like a 2.5 hour drive north.
I've
That
never
is
been
beautiful.
either, and I've
Yeah,
literally
exactly.
been saying I'm
It's
going to go
crazy.
for like 3 years.
Right. Or like La Jolla, which is a surf town, again, an hour and a half drive south. Like, I don't know how I've missed these places. I feel very grateful to definitely live in a quarter of the world that has a lot of different environments to see within driving distance. And I think I'm definitely going to be focusing on that, because I'm seeing, I mean, I'm sure you're a member of a lot of travel groups as well online. And there are some people who are asking, you know, X country said that they don't really want tourists or visitors through 2021, but I want to get there. How do I get there anyway? And then people giving them advice. I'm like, well, you can fly into neighboring X country and then the ground check isn't as strict. I'm like, I think it's so important as travelers going forward in this pandemic situation, but also in general, that we are aware of the impact we are making, and we are aware of how we are relating to the places we visit. If a country has said that for whatever reason, they have no community transmission, or they don't have the healthcare facilities to handle a big outbreak, for whatever reason, they don't want visitors, don't force yourself in there,
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, but it's even with this whole pandemic, it's like there's
Yeah.
so many people out there that just continue to think that it's not real, that the media is hyping it, that it's like the flu, that we shouldn't be wearing masks.
And I'm personally a little biased because I have my family, my parents, and a lot of my old friends in New York, and the amount, knock on wood, everyone I personally know has made it through, not so much for relatives of friends or other people, but the amount of people that have been hospitalized, the amount of people that have gone through hell, it's not, my college roommate works as a resident in NYU Langone. Like, it's not a joke, because it's not an easy situation. And yeah, for travel especially, just I think we need to be very mindful, even when we are traveling domestically and closely. We need to be very mindful. Like, we don't want to be bringing something to a rural, smaller community, as we want to make sure we're being safe and we're not a vector of transmission in our travel. So yeah,
absolutely, because none of us really know, and so it is good to just obviously follow the guidelines. Obviously,
and now that testing is increasing,
home, you guys can stay home.
Yes, it is not easy for me. Like, I don't even know, it feels like all of time is blended into one day. It's just like one day that's ongoing. But
I actually really enjoyed your article where you said that like quarantining alone is kind of like solo travel.
Is it, I was journaling one morning, which is a thing I do now in quarantine. It's yoga, meditation, journaling. It helps keep you sane. I'll say that. It's definitely helped me, as sane as I ever am anyway. But I was journaling one morning, and the thought kind of hit me that, this is a lot of what I feel when I'm traveling in another country alone, because it feels like all your emotional states are kind of at a fast forward, because there's nothing to really distract you. There's not a routine or, a commute or something to take your mind off that. And just the fact that, solo travel, obviously you're experiencing new places and meeting new people and doing whatever, but it is a situation in which you are forcibly removed from everything familiar, from your community, from your social support, from your routine, from, the life basically. And you have to figure out where you stand and who you are as a person, like confront yourself as a person without all these things that usually define us, without, for a lot of people right now, without our jobs, without our hobbies and habits that we can do outside, without the communities we're used to. And I think it's a big soul searching moment for a lot of people. It definitely has been for me. And for me, it does remind me of the soul searching moments I have when I'm alone in a foreign place and can't really, talk to a lot of people and don't have any of the usual support systems or like pillars I fall back on to just not have to think of too much, And for me, in that way, definitely is a lot like solo travel.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. Because I know for me, when I solo travel too, it's like, I guess part of it's also being a woman, but like I typically don't like go out and like talk to a lot of people on the street.
Right.
Obviously, if you're traveling somewhere where there's a big language barrier, that becomes
me in Japan was a problem.
Oh my gosh, I know. When I was in China, I was like, I mean, no one, I was in this like really remote area. No one spoke any.
I remember your stories.
So it was mostly like pantomiming. I don't want that.
You're like, how can I express myself?
Yeah, but you're right, because I mean, obviously I live with my boyfriend. You are alone in a house, so you do have a pregnant dog.
I do have a pregnant dog, which that was a surprise. So yeah, long story short, I fostered a dog in quarantine that I ended up adopting because I was going to adopt anyway. I just couldn't do it right off the bat because of they have, reduced staff and they're kind of swamped right now. And surprise, she turned out to be pregnant. because vets aren't doing spaying and neutering. They're starting, I think, now again, but it's considered a non-emergency procedure, and they had kind of shut down for all of that for quarantine. So now I'm gonna have 5 puppies, guys.
Now you're a mom as well, so.
Yep, mom and I guess soon to be grandma. Yes. I did not think I was gonna have a dog birth in my apartment, but you know, life throws things at you. It's definitely been keeping me busy. I'm, you know, reading up on like what to expect during dog labor and how to know if a dog is having contractions. And
I will say, I think all of us are learning a lot during quarantine.
Yes.
Obviously, you're learning things you never thought you would learn.
Dog contractions. Yeah, did not think I would be learning about that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, exciting things.
Exciting things for sure. Exciting things for sure. I mean, yeah, it's been an interesting time. But I have found that, you know, the productive days, I am actually doing some things. Like I've started doing Spanish lessons online, like with a conversational partner and tutor in Mexico City.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm taking this blog course that I want to take forever and finally got around to. I recorded my first podcast, so it's great. And I'm starting to, because I've had a YouTube channel for a while, but like I've put out like 5 videos, I think. And I'm trying to get content together to really get the video editing process, because like your videos are amazing, and I'm sitting there trying to edit my first video, and I'm just like, how does any of this work? You know, it's a learning curve.
It is a learning curve, just like this.
Yes, exactly.
It's a learning curve.
Exactly. And yeah, again, there are weeks where like I'm doing all of that. I wake up in the morning and do my yoga and meditation, and then I write a bunch of things for the blog, and I do my blog course. And then there are days where I wake up and I'm like, I want to see a comedy. I like, forget it, you know? So I think it's important to keep in mind that, you know, even though a lot of people are doing amazing things and learning things in quarantine and, you know, doing whatever coping mechanism helps keep us sane, I think it's important to also not beat ourselves up if we have a day where like we just can't, and we just want to take it easier, just like talk to friends all day and not bother with anything else. And, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm having those days too. Like I'll have days where I'm super productive, and then I'll have a day where I just like want to lay in my bed and watch Netflix, or, you know,
exactly,
hide under a blanket or something.
I literally, yesterday I had this whole thing where I'm like, so Saturday's my day off from work. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to read all these books I want to get to, or like see these film classics I haven't gone to. And I'm like, there's another Scandinavian murder mystery on Netflix. What? Done. Like, never mind.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of TV too.
Yeah, for sure.
I did want to quickly just go to a couple of questions. We have some questions from the chat, and then we also have some questions from Instagram. So one of the questions we had in the chat is, are there any Pacific destinations you would recommend for adventure, like New Zealand, Tahiti, etc., something over in that region?
Ooh, I don't personally I haven't been to those areas, so personally can't recommend much, but I have several friends who swear that New Zealand is one of the most beautiful, adventurous places they have ever been to. And it's definitely recommended if you are thinking of solo travel, especially as a woman. It is recommended as a very safe place you can kind of explore alone and go on adventures for sure. So New Zealand would be my pick, just based off every single friend I know who's gone there and loved it and had a great time.
Yeah, I haven't been to New Zealand, but I will definitely concur with you. I actually talked to someone yesterday from New Zealand, and he was telling me about some amazing destinations over there, and I was looking at all the photos. So I definitely have some wanderlust for New Zealand right now.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. So I would recommend that one too. And obviously Tahiti, some of those islands over there are amazing.
I'd go to any of those in a heartbeat.
Right. I know. I can't wait to go to an island when this is over. One of the other questions we had from Instagram was from Love Travel Places, and they asked, what motivates you to work hard?
Oof. Well, I'll answer this way. I think one of the wisest things I ever read that kind of changed my outlook on motivation of working hard is that motivation doesn't necessarily come before the work. Start doing the work and the motivation will come. And I think that's definitely something I live by now, in terms of like, especially when you're doing creative things, like you're not always motivated to write. You're not always inspired to write. You're not always motivated to do something. But I do find that if you just start doing the work, any work, if you just open a page and just start writing, it's part of the reason I do my morning journaling sessions, just start writing anything. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't even have to be like coherent to anyone but you. Just start working, and the motivation tends to come when you get into that groove. Actually, I was just reading this book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, which I highly recommend for motivation. It talks about time blocking and basically giving yourself that space to get into a state of flow. So you're just, going creatively. And a lot of what it is just, even when you don't feel like it, do it, honestly, because waiting for motivation it's not going to produce the work you wanted to produce, and I find, I don't know about you, Alice, but I find this true for a lot of things in life. Like the days sometimes where I don't feel like working out or don't feel like, I don't know, getting online with a Zoom with other people it ends up being sometimes the days I actually need to do it most, so
yeah, we definitely all have to, I think, listen to ourselves. I
Mm-hmm.
know for me, I have to time block stuff out too, to help me kind of stay on task, because it is really easy, especially right now, to just not get anything done, but seemingly work all day.
Yeah. Work all day and doing nothing.
Exactly. So I've definitely come up with some new strategies on how to get that stuff done. Okay, so I wanted to do some rapid fire questions as well.
Sure.
But first, one other question that we had was 2 places on your travel bucket list.
Ooh, Vietnam, number 1, because it was the place I was supposed to go after my accident in South Africa for my study abroad. I never went, and I hear it is life-changingly beautiful. So yeah, so I would say Vietnam is 1, and then 2 is a little random, but 2 is Oman. So I've had this thing with Oman. I met a few women working for Oman Air, and they were just telling me how beautiful and authentic it is, like a real Middle Eastern destination. And yeah, I just want to come.
I've actually seen some amazing photos from Oman. And
Yes.
When I started my company, Travaganic, one of the hotels that I was researching was in Oman. And it was I don't know if it was a Six Senses or a different brand, but just overlooking this huge valley. I mean, yeah, absolutely beautiful. Nothing that you would ever think of existing in the Middle East.
Exactly.
And it honestly blew my mind. So I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of things. I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
When I say favorite food.
Steak.
Favorite drink.
Paloma.
The most memorable place I visited was?
Greece. Home.
If you could go to any beach.
It would have to be Lefkada Beach. Yeah. The island beach. Yeah.
Awesome.
Greece. In Greece.
The next mountain I want to climb is?
Ooh, Mount Whitney.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
We'll have to go together.
Yes.
If I want to see wildlife, I will go to?
Serengeti.
Best country for coffee?
Ooh, Italy.
Best drink you've ever had on a travel?
Don't remember the name. Bar in Cartagena, Colombia, serve the best drinks ever. I will remember.
Oh, that's a trip you did recently, right? That was last year?
Yes, last year.
Favorite guilty pleasure?
Oh, just old murder mystery shows, honestly. It's all I want to watch.
That's awesome. And where did you take your first solo trip?
Japan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that is a place I still haven't been.
That it is. I mean, I have such great memories. Japan is it caused me a lot of emotions on both ends of the spectrum, because I was alone in a country where I couldn't speak to mostly anyone. And it's even in countries where you don't speak the language, if I go to Portugal, I don't speak Portuguese, I can still, read the signs and get an idea of what's going on. Here it's I can't read anything. I can't communicate. I felt like a toddler. So, with no mother to guide me through, obviously. But Japan is, it's culturally, it is the most different place I've been to from what I've grown up and been used to. There is no way, even, I would venture to say, even if you're, Japanese American, maybe 3rd generation, and you look fully Japanese, it's like there's so many traditions and so many things that I feel like if you're not raised in that culture, you would out yourself, like you're an outsider immediately, right? Like,
Yeah.
But it was so beautiful and it was so interesting. And, you know, I left there and I realized after a few weeks there, I'm like, oh, so now I'm bowing to like say thank you to people. Like it kind of starts getting ingrained on you, things that happen there. Or they're very hygienic, for example. Like you go even for coffee and they'll give you a wet wipe to wipe your hands before taking a coffee cup.
Oh, wow.
And then, yeah. And then when I came back from that, I'm like, I just feel dirty all the time. Why isn't anyone like, yeah.
Yeah, travel definitely changes you and gives you a perspective on a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So where do you think your first destination is going to be after we get out of this next
So
lifestyle?
this is an interesting thing. My parents are thinking of doing a relocation to Greece for the rest of this pandemic. And if that happened, I'd probably want to follow them. You know, we'd quarantine test before, quarantine after.
Yeah.
But my first trip is somewhere new. Ooh, I actually want to go to Taiwan, which I don't know why that wasn't on my list, but weirdly enough, I saw Spirited Away online with some friends on that Netflix party thing. And Spirited Away is from the Japanese animation studio, Studio Ghibli. It's one of their biggest movies. And apparently the town it features is based in large part on real, like this real mythological looking place in Taiwan. And I'm like, well, you know what, that should happen. I need to go. And also because I feel Taiwan might tend to get overlooked. Like, you know, people think of East Asia, it's like South Korea, Japan, China, and maybe tend to overlook a place like Taiwan. But I'd really like to go experience that, and then maybe just jump over Vietnam and do that dream trip too. So
Yeah, I mean, if you're there, you might as well do as much as possible.
Exactly. How about yourself? Do you have any ideas?
I don't know, honestly, it's probably going to be somewhere closer to home.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure. I mean, I've been wanting to go to Venezuela for a long time. Obviously, that's
Yeah.
not very safe, and I don't think that they really like Americans right now.
No.
Or anyone else.
No. Or yeah, I was gonna say.
I'd love to go to Alaska, but that's kind of dependent on the season, so we'll see. But you know, I definitely want to climb Jade Mountain in Taiwan. There's a million places on my bucket list that I want to go.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with.
I feel like we're kind of similar in that if anyone says any place to me, that's probably my bucket list already. Like, I don't think there's a lot of places where I'm like, no, I don't ever need to see that. That's fine. So, yeah.
Yeah. Before we hop off here, I want to know one thing that you've learned while being in quarantine. Maybe a lesson or something you realized about yourself.
Yeah, I have learned for sure who the really important people and connections in my life are, because they have been like lifelines through all of this, you know, both in terms of family and friends. And I've definitely learned the lesson of like really wanting to make sure, because sometimes, you know, when you're traveling, especially, it's easy to kind of, you know, be in and out of like friend groups and be in and out of social groups and kind of just be that person that's half there and half isn't. But like, I definitely realize the people that I want to put more effort into maintaining my connections with, because they're truly amazing people and amazing bonds. So yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I've learned during quarantine too. And just, you know, all these relationships, I think, that have become stronger, you know, while you've been home. But I just wanted to also say thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to let you take it away for a second and let everyone know where they can find you if they want to connect with you on your website, on social media.
For sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. This was a beautiful Sunday so far. So you guys can find me. My blog is at losethemap.com. My Instagram is at losethemap_. You should follow my YouTube channel. That's under my personal name, Joanna Kalafatis, even though if you input Lose the Map, you'll find it as well, most likely. Because I am putting together a bunch of content to come out. And I will put up links. I have not started. I'm still editing my first podcast episode, but when that happens, I'll be putting up links on all my social media and everything. So definitely check me out on those platforms, are the ones I use the most. And I hope to see you there.
Awesome. Yes. And I will put all of those links for all of Joanna's social media stuff in the description below. So you guys can find that right there. And you guys know where you can find me right here on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at Alice Alford, on my Instagram at Alice's Adventures on Earth. So thank you guys all so much for joining. If you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below in the comment section. And I will see you guys out hopefully on an adventure very soon. But make sure you connect with both of us on social, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye. Thank you.